If someone had told me that a Mafia Don would one day fall in love with me, I would have laughed in their face. I wasn't anyone special. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. I wasn't powerful. I was just Anna, a girl who sold flowers. A girl who spent her days trying to keep her grandfather's tiny flower shop alive. A girl who thought her biggest problem was paying next month's bills. I had no idea my life was about to change forever. And it all started with a black car. Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Drama Stories, where we brought Reddit stories to life. Make sure you subscribe the channel so that you will get notified of next video. The day began like every other day. The bell above the flower shop door chimed softly as customers came and went. Fresh roses filled the air with their sweet scent. My grandfather sat behind the counter organizing receipts while I arranged bouquets near the front window. It was a simple life. Not glamorous, not exciting, but it was ours. And after losing my parents when I was a baby, it was the only home I'd ever known. Anna, Grandpa called. Yes? You've been staring out that window for 10 minutes. I laughed. No, I haven't. You have. I smiled. He always caught everything. At 78 years old, his eyesight wasn't great anymore. But somehow he still noticed things nobody else did. I stepped outside carrying a bucket of fresh flowers. The afternoon sun warmed my face. Cars passed by. People hurried along the sidewalk. Nothing unusual, until I saw it. A black luxury sedan parked across the street. Expensive. Impossibly expensive. The kind of car that looked out of place in our neighborhood. I wouldn't have paid much attention to it if the driver hadn't been staring directly at me. Our eyes met, and suddenly I couldn't look away. The man sitting inside the car looked like he belonged in a movie. Dark hair, sharp features, perfectly tailored black suit, a face that somehow looked both handsome and dangerous. But it was his eyes that unsettled me. They weren't simply looking at me. They were studying me, as though he had been searching for something. And somehow he had finally found it. A horn blared behind him. The moment broke. The man looked away. The car pulled back into traffic. And disappeared. I stood frozen on the sidewalk. For reasons I couldn't explain, I knew one thing. That wouldn't be the last time I saw him. I was right. The next morning, he returned. And that was the beginning of everything. The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't think about the man in the black car. I failed. Completely. Every few minutes I found myself glancing toward the street. Expecting to see that luxury sedan. Expecting to see those dark eyes watching me again. Anna, Grandpa's voice interrupted my thoughts. I jumped. What? He laughed. You've checked that window 12 times. No, I haven't. You have. I opened my mouth to argue. Then stopped. Because the black sedan had just pulled up outside. My heart skipped a beat. The driver stepped out, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. He was taller than I'd imagined. Well over 6 feet, perfectly tailored black suit, dark hair slightly tousled by the wind. Confident stride, the kind of confidence that couldn't be bought. People moved out of his way without realizing they were doing it. The bell above the flower shop door chimed, and suddenly he was standing inside. The entire shop felt smaller, warmer, more dangerous. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked directly at me. I'd like flowers. I almost laughed. Of course he wanted flowers. This was a flower shop. What kind? His eyes remained fixed on mine. You choose. I blinked. You don't have a preference? No. I picked up a bouquet of white roses. He nodded. I'll take those. The bouquet cost $20. He handed me $100. Keep the change. Before I could respond, he turned and walked out. Just like that. Grandpa watched the entire thing. The moment the door closed, he smiled. Oh. I narrowed my eyes. Oh what? He likes you. I nearly dropped the cash register drawer. Grandpa, I'm serious. He's just a customer. Grandpa looked unconvinced. Very unconvinced. Unfortunately, he turned out to be right. Because the next day, the man came back. And the day after that. And the day after that. Every day. Without fail. Sometimes roses. Sometimes lilies. Sometimes tulips. He bought enough flowers to supply an entire wedding. Eventually curiosity got the better of me. On the 10th day, I finally asked, "What do you do with all these flowers?" His expression remained calm. "I give them away." I folded my arms. Every day? Every day. Why? For the first time, amusement appeared in his eyes. Because buying one flower wouldn't give me an excuse to stay. My heart stopped. The words hit me harder than they should have. Before I could respond, another customer entered. The moment passed, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering why a complete stranger seemed so interested in me, wondering why I couldn't stop thinking about him, and wondering why his smile kept replaying in my head. A week later, I learned his name. Not from him, from someone else. A woman entered the shop carrying an expensive handbag. The moment she noticed him standing near the roses, her face changed. Fear, real fear. She immediately lowered her eyes. "Good afternoon, Mr. Moretti." The name clearly meant something, because everyone nearby became quiet. The man simply nodded. After she left, I couldn't contain my curiosity. "Mr. Moretti?" He looked up. "Charles." "What?" "My name is Charles." The way he said it made my stomach flutter, as though hearing my voice say his name mattered to him. "I'm Anna." A smile appeared. "I know." I froze. "You know?" His expression immediately shifted, almost as though he regretted saying it. But before he could explain, his phone rang. The screen lit up. Several missed calls. The expression on his face darkened instantly. Something dangerous entered his eyes. Something cold. Something that hadn't been there before. He stood. "I have to go." Then he left. Just like that, I watched the black sedan disappear. And for the first time, I wondered who Charles Moretti really was. The answer arrived 2 days later. And it terrified me. I was walking home after closing the shop. The streets were unusually quiet. Most stores had already shut down. The sky threatened rain. I was halfway home when I noticed footsteps behind me. At first I ignored them. Then they got closer. My stomach tightened. I quickened my pace. The footsteps quickened too. Fear crawled up my spine. I turned. 2 men. Neither looked friendly. One smiled. The kind of smile that immediately makes you uncomfortable. "Hey beautiful." I kept walking. They followed. "Come on." My pulse accelerated. The street suddenly felt very empty. Very isolated. One of them grabbed my wrist. Panic exploded inside me. "Let go." He laughed. Then suddenly, everything changed. The man's smile vanished. Completely. His face turned pale. Terrified. I looked behind him, and saw Charles, standing in the middle of the street. His expression was unreadable, yet somehow more frightening than yelling. The 2 men immediately released me. Charles didn't raise his voice. Didn't threaten them. Didn't even move. Yet both men looked like they wanted to run. And then they did. They practically sprinted away, disappearing around the corner. I stared at Charles. What just happened? He walked toward me. "Are you hurt?" The concern in his voice surprised me. I shook my head. "No." His shoulders visibly relaxed. For several seconds we simply stood there. Rain began to fall, soft droplets against the pavement. Then Charles removed his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. The gesture was unexpectedly gentle, unexpectedly intimate. "Come." "What?" "I'll take you home." I hesitated. Every sensible instinct told me to refuse. Yet somehow, I trusted him. The drive was quiet, comfortable, dangerously comfortable. As we approached my apartment building, I finally gathered enough courage to ask, "Who are you really?" Silence. Then, "Someone you should stay away from." I laughed softly. "That's not an answer." His jaw tightened. For the first time, he looked genuinely conflicted. Then he said something that stayed with me for weeks. "Anna." The way he said my name made my heart race. "If you knew everything about me." His voice dropped lower. "You wouldn't be sitting in this car." The words should have scared me. Instead, they made me curious. Because for the first time, I realized Charles was hiding something. Something enormous. And deep down, I suspected it had something to do with the fear I saw in other people's eyes whenever they looked at him. I just didn't know how dangerous the truth really was. And I definitely didn't know that somewhere across the city, someone was already watching me. Someone who knew exactly who Charles Moretti was. Someone who intended to use me against him. Looking back now, I wish I had listened to Charles. I wish I had stayed away. I wish I had ignored the black car. Ignored the flowers. Ignored those dark eyes that somehow made me feel safe. Because if I had, maybe my grandfather would still be alive. Maybe everything that happened afterward could have been avoided. But life doesn't work like that. The next morning I arrived at the flower shop exhausted. I hadn't slept. My thoughts kept returning to Charles. Who was he? Why were people afraid of him? And why did he seem so determined to protect me? Grandpa immediately noticed something was wrong. "You look terrible." "Thanks." He laughed. "Late night thinking?" I froze. He smiled knowingly. "You like him?" "No." "Anna." I sighed. "Maybe." Grandpa's smile faded. Unexpectedly. The change was so sudden it caught me off guard. For a moment he looked worried. Actually worried. "Grandpa?" He stared toward the window. Toward the street. As if expecting someone. Then he shook his head. "Nothing." But I knew him. Something was bothering him, something serious. The rest of the day passed quietly. Until evening, and then Charles appeared again. As usual, black suit, perfect posture, those same intense eyes. The moment he entered, the atmosphere changed. Even Grandpa noticed. Charles approached the counter. White roses. I laughed. You bought white roses yesterday. And? You bought white roses the day before that. And? I smiled despite myself. He looked pleased, dangerously pleased, as though making me smile was some kind of victory. Then his gaze shifted to Grandpa. The two men looked at each other. Something passed between them, something I couldn't understand. Respect, recognition, possibly even concern. Charles finally nodded. Good evening, sir. Grandpa nodded back. You too. The exchange lasted only seconds. Yet somehow it felt important. Very important. That night, after Charles left, Grandpa locked the shop unusually early. Then he led me into the small office at the back. Sit. I frowned. His voice sounded serious. I obeyed. Grandpa opened an old drawer. From inside he removed a small silver key. One I'd never seen before. My heart skipped. What is that? His expression grew distant. A promise. What? A promise I made a very long time ago. I stared at him, confused. Grandpa, what are you talking about? He looked older than I'd ever seen him. Tired, almost sad. Then he placed the key in my hand. If anything happens to me. My stomach dropped. Nothing is happening to you. Anna. His voice softened. If anything happens to me, take this key. I shook my head. No. Listen carefully. Fear started growing inside me. Real fear, because suddenly this conversation felt wrong. Very wrong. There's a safe deposit box. My pulse accelerated. What safe deposit box? Downtown bank. I stared at him. What is in it? For several seconds he remained silent. Then, the truth. The room became completely silent. What truth? His eyes met mine. The truth about your parents. Everything stopped. My breathing, my thoughts, my heart. For 23 years nobody had talked about my parents. Nobody. I barely remembered them. All I knew was they died in an accident when I was a baby. At least that's what I'd always been told. Grandpa, my voice shook. What do you mean? His expression darkened, but before he could answer, the front bell rang. Both of us froze. Nobody should have been there. The shop was closed. Grandpa immediately stood. I followed. A man waited outside. Expensive suit, dark sunglasses. Despite the evening darkness, everything about him screamed trouble. The moment Grandpa saw him, his face lost color. Completely. The stranger smiled. A cold smile. Good evening. Grandpa didn't respond. The man glanced toward me. And suddenly his smile widened. That's her? A chill ran through my body. I had never seen him before. Yet somehow he seemed to know exactly who I was. Grandpa stepped in front of me. Protectively. The stranger laughed. Still protecting secrets after all these years? Nobody spoke. Then the man said something that changed everything. He knows where the documents are. My heart pounded. Documents? What documents? Grandpa's jaw tightened. The stranger looked at me. Then smiled again. If I were you. His voice became almost gentle. I'd ask him how your parents really died. The world stopped. Before I could react, a black SUV appeared, screeching to a halt beside the shop. The stranger's expression instantly changed. Fear, real fear. The rear door opened, and Charles stepped out. The stranger immediately backed away. I looked between them, completely confused. Charles's eyes were ice cold. Dangerous. Deadly. Nothing like the man who bought flowers every day. The stranger laughed nervously. Moretti. Charles said nothing. The silence somehow felt worse. Several men exited the SUV behind him. Large, armed, professional. Suddenly I understood. The rumors were true. All of them. The stranger looked at me one last time. Then quickly left, disappearing into the darkness. Only after he was gone did Charles turn toward us. His gaze settled on Grandpa. What did he tell her? Grandpa remained silent. Charles cursed under his breath. The fact that Charles knew Grandpa, knew the stranger, knew about whatever was happening, terrified me. What is going on? Nobody answered. Can somebody please tell me what is happening? Still silence. Then Charles looked directly at me, and finally said the words that changed my life forever. Anna. His voice was calm. Too calm. You are in danger. I stared at him. What? The people looking for those documents. His jaw tightened. They killed for them once. The room spun. Killed? What are you talking about? Charles took a step closer. Your parents didn't die in an accident. My entire world shattered. What? Every sound disappeared. Every thought. Everything. I could only hear my own heartbeat. Charles looked like he regretted saying it. But it was too late. The truth was already out. My God, I whispered. Grandpa lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. And in that moment, I knew, somewhere deep inside, I knew, they had both been hiding something from me. Something enormous, something dangerous, and whatever it was, it had finally caught up to us. I couldn't breathe. The flower shop suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too suffocating. Charles's words echoed inside my head. Your parents didn't die in an accident. For 23 years I had believed one story. One simple story. A tragic car crash. A rainy night. 2 lives lost. The end. Now Charles was telling me everything I knew was a lie. I looked at Grandpa. My hands were shaking. Tell me he's lying. Silence. The answer was written across Grandpa's face before he even spoke. The truth. The horrible truth. Slowly, Grandpa sat down, looking older than I had ever seen him. Then he spoke, and my world fell apart. Your parents were good people. His voice cracked. Very good people. I sat opposite him, unable to move, unable to think. Charles remained silent near the door, watching, protecting, waiting. Grandpa looked at the key in my hand, then continued. Your father wasn't an ordinary man. My pulse accelerated. What does that mean? He worked for powerful people. Businessmen? Grandpa laughed bitterly. No. The room became silent. Then he said, Mafia families. I stared at him, certain I had heard wrong. Mafia? This wasn't a movie. This wasn't some television show. This was my life. My father was a criminal? No. Grandpa shook his head. That's the tragedy. He wasn't. Your father was an accountant. An honest man. He handled financial records. Then one day he discovered something he wasn't supposed to discover. The room felt colder. What? Grandpa looked toward Charles, then back at me. He discovered millions of dollars being moved through fake companies. Charles closed his eyes, almost as if he already knew this story. Money laundering. The words barely registered. Grandpa continued. The people responsible were very powerful. Who? Silence. Then, the Romano family. The name meant nothing to me, but it clearly meant something to Charles, because his entire body became tense. Dangerously tense. Grandpa noticed. You know them. Charles nodded once. They're our enemies. The word didn't escape me. I looked directly at him. What are you? The room became silent. Charles didn't answer immediately. Then finally, I'm the head of the Moretti family. I blinked. The Moretti family? His expression remained unreadable. One of the largest criminal organizations in the country. Everything inside me froze. The rumors were true. All of them. Charles Moretti wasn't connected to the mafia. He was the mafia. The most dangerous man I had ever met. The man who bought flowers every day. The man who saved me. The man I couldn't stop thinking about. I stood up, needing distance, needing air, needing something. This is insane. Charles didn't move, didn't argue, didn't try to stop me. For some reason that made everything worse. Because he looked genuinely concerned about me. Not himself. Me. Grandpa continued. Your father copied the records. I turned back. What records? The evidence. The evidence that could destroy the Romano family. My pulse accelerated. Suddenly everything began making sense. The stranger, the threats, the key, the documents, everything. And then, Grandpa's eyes filled with sadness. They found out. The room became completely silent. They came for him. My throat tightened. And my mother? A tear rolled down Grandpa's cheek. She refused to leave him. I closed my eyes, unable to process what I was hearing. They died together, because they refused to abandon each other. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Charles quietly said, they weren't supposed to kill your mother. Grandpa looked surprised. You know that? Charles nodded. The order was only for your father. The revelation shocked all of us. What? Charles's expression darkened. The Romano family made a mistake. A deadly mistake. My stomach turned. A mistake that cost my parents their lives. The next morning everything changed. Charles refused to let me leave alone. I can walk myself. No. I've been walking myself for years. His expression remained firm. Not anymore. The certainty in his voice frustrated me. And strangely comforted me. I hated that. I hated how safe I felt around him. Especially now. Especially after learning who he was. Still, I allowed him to drive me. Mostly because Grandpa insisted. The flower shop opened normally. Customers arrived. Flowers sold. Life continued. At least on the surface. Underneath everything, I knew a storm was coming. Around noon a black envelope appeared. No return address. No stamp. Nothing. Just my name. Anna. My hands immediately began shaking. Inside was a photograph. I froze. The picture showed my parents. Young, happy, standing beside another man. A familiar man. Charles. Or rather, a younger version of Charles. Maybe 18 years old. I couldn't breathe. Why was Charles in a photograph with my parents? Before I could ask, a second photograph fell out. And this one was even worse. It showed my uncle, the uncle who abandoned us, standing beside members of the Romano family. My entire body went cold. Then I noticed the note. 3 words. Ask Charles everything. My heart nearly stopped. I immediately grabbed my phone. 30 minutes later I stood inside Charles's office. It occupied the top floor of a skyscraper. Modern, luxurious, intimidating, much like him. I slammed the photograph onto his desk. What is this? For the first time since meeting him, Charles looked shocked. Actually shocked. He picked up the picture. His expression darkened instantly. Where did you get this? Answer me. Silence. Then, I knew your father. The room spun. What? I knew him. My chest tightened. How? Charles stared at the photograph, as if seeing a ghost. Then he said something I never expected. He saved my life. Everything stopped. What? Charles looked directly at me. Years ago, before I became Don, I was attacked. Your father helped me escape. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The stories were becoming more impossible by the minute. Charles continued. That's why I recognized your surname. My pulse accelerated. When I first saw you in the flower shop. His voice softened. I knew exactly who you were. I stared at him, unable to speak. All this time, Charles had known. The entire time. And suddenly one terrifying question appeared in my mind. If Charles knew who I was, who else knew? Almost as if fate wanted to answer me immediately. The office doors exploded open. A security guard stumbled inside. Bleeding. Everyone jumped to their feet. The guard looked terrified. Don. His voice shook. The Romano family has her grandfather. Everything stopped. My heart dropped. No. The guard nodded. They took him. The world shattered. Grandpa was gone. And for the first time since meeting Charles, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. This is the first part of story. Do watch the next part for the unexpected twists in Anna's and Charlie's love story. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more Reddit drama stories. Let me know in the comments. Until then, sending you lots of love.